care of the rest. Mookie Betts scores a run. Very, very specific preview prediction. 4-2 Dodgers to take a 2-1 series lead.
Add a stolen base.
I've literally never heard a more specific prediction in my entire life.
Take it to the bank, America.
75 years of broadcasting. Back to our top story this morning, Thursday Night Football. Giants, Eagles in a crazy ending. Giants with an 11-point lead with 6 minutes to go. Seems like a pretty safe lead unless you play in the NFC East, where it's literally anyone's division. Last night, Eagles stepped up. Carson Wentz, 2 fourth-quarter touchdown drives. Eagles win, but just barely. They get win number 2. They move into first place for now in the NFC East. And here is Carson Wentz after the win.
We said, hey, I mean, there wasn't a lot of time, but we said, hey, there's enough time. There's enough time. We got to just keep believing and just take it one play at a time. Obviously, we were in turbo on the ball, 2-minute mode the rest of the game. But, I mean, the same thing that I echo every game when we're down. Hey, just keep believing, just one play at a time, and the big play is going to hit. It's going to happen, and John had the big one on that first drive, and obviously Boston the second drive. And guys just keep believing and keep rallying together, and that's what it's going to take to win a lot of these ball games.
Oh, I think there's going to be a lot of believing to win in this division. Michael Vick joins us now this morning. Mike, good morning. Thanks for being with us. Let's start there. Was last night more about the Eagles coming back or about the Giants blowing it?
It was a little bit of both. I think the Eagles, they did what they needed to do at the moment of truth, man. You know, just being in another situation where they was down, and when we probably thought that they was not going to come back and win the football game. And I'm saying to myself, this is going to be another disaster and more news to talk about tomorrow. And then Carson Wentz steps up the way he's supposed to. And, you know, he leads a big drive, 2 big drives, and the defense stepped up. And I think for the New York Giants, you know, this would be a learning experience for them. They'll learn how to keep a lead, and the defense will figure out how to go out and get stops when they need it the most. So I think the Philadelphia Eagles, they certainly put themselves in a position, even with everything going on, guys getting hurt, the offensive line still being banged up, guys going in and out of the lineup. Carson Wentz found a way to bring the team back, and I thought it was a good win for the franchise last night.
Yeah, Mike, this was definitely more about the Eagles because they're more relevant. And I thought the same thing when I was watching the game. I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm really enjoying this. Because when you approach this game, you're thinking about, well, the division, it's a bad division, it's a terrible division. And you look at their records like, oh, they're not good teams. And then you turn on the game and there's actually some good football being played. But I thought about that as well. I'm like, so if they lose this game, that means now we're talking more about the Giants, who's not playing well, and now it's a 3-team division race. Like, that's what we're going to be talking about. And I just didn't want to get into the storyline, so I thought the same thing. I thought Carson Wentz overcame his offensive line play. They've been banged up all year. And finally, he got some help from his younger wide receivers. And the more plays that they made, the better he looked. If you go back to week 1, week 2, he was pressing. He still pressed a little bit this past game, but his feet was horrible in the pocket. His arm didn't look good. And last night, you can see him look like a golfer, sit in the pocket, take his time. Feet look great. Arm look crisp. So I thought Carson Wentz progressed and got better. He didn't do too much in that second half, and that's why they got the win, because he just stayed poised.
I want to ask you a question, Vic, because certainly with Wentz and a little bit with Daniel Jones as well, what you have is a quarterback that if I just showed you their 10 best throws, you would say, oh, that can be a great quarterback in this league. But if I showed you their 10 biggest mistakes, you would say, oh, well, that guy's never going to make it. When you are evaluating quarterbacks, what to you gives you more confidence? For lack of a better example, the Teddy Bridgewater lane, where it's the great throws aren't that great, but the mistakes are minimal. You know what I mean? A guy who's not going to wreck the car, not going to wow you with anything. Or the more Carson Wentz lane where it's like, oh, my God, that throw to Boston Scott was amazing. And then on the other hand, it's like, oh, my God, that interception in the end zone, how do you make that mistake? So, like, for you, when you're evaluating a quarterback, what gives you more confidence?
How they play in the moment, in the moment of truth, when, you know, the game is on the line, when they're facing a deficit when they got to come back. I evaluate them throughout the course of the game, but it's more so when the pressure's on, when I'm paying close attention to, the decision making. Are they rattled? Are they poised? Do they have what it takes internally to bring their team back? And can they stay in it and not get antsy? And watching Carson Wentz last night, it was mixed emotions. I seen balls flying cross-body back across the field. I seen some errant throws, and then, I see some amazing plays. And so I'm watching and not really getting a feel of what's really happening and what's taking place. But then in the end, they find a way to win the game. And I'm looking at Carson like, this is how it needs to be done. It wasn't pretty, but you got it done. So, I'm looking at a little bit of everything, but I think what has to stand out is the decisions that they make, in the moment.
Yeah, I'm going to go another way, Mike. I'm going to put a moratorium on Carson Wentz watching any Patrick Mahomes highlights or any Michael Vick highlights. Because a little bit when I look up a recipe, I'm going to try to cook. I'm like, wow, that's how you chop an onion? I'm going to do that. And they're like, whop, whop, whop. And then you take it upstairs and you're like, oh, I'm going to cut my fingers off. This was a play in the second quarter. And, Mike, this is what Troy Aikman said. All you young quarterbacks watching on your couch, don't do this. You will not finish the game as the quarterback. So this is just bonkers. I think the guy believes in himself a little too much. And I know that's like their sixth offensive line, and maybe he has to do this. But to me, I think he just needs to throw the ball away and stop trying to make things happen, Mike.
No, like Brandon said, this is Carson Wentz pressing. And when you got the media barreling down on you, we got us talking about you each and every week and trying to get the best out of you, then you're going to try to get the best out of yourself. And I understand Carson in those moments, but like Troy Aikman said last night, you still have to be cautious. And like I said, you have to still be able to be poised and make good decisions, when the team needs you the most. And those are, desperation situations, but that's when you got to be at your best. That's why you get paid the big bucks.
And Wilds, this is a game is a great example as to why, and I know you give me a hard time about it, why I try not to be so results-based in how we evaluate players and teams based just on, well, they won in the end. Because Carson Wentz's best moment, best throw of the night was that pass to Boston Scott. It was a 10 out of 10. But he does not have the opportunity to make that throw. And instead, we are talking about what a disaster of a game this was for Philly. If Evan Ingram can make a catch that every player in the NFL would make outside of maybe Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. A perfectly thrown pass right in front of his hands that he drops. And so, I think we've got to be fair and honest about Philly here. You do feel good about the fact they found a way to win. But that was in part because the Giants created another new way to lose, Brandon. And so when you were saying, you're glad we're not talking about it being a 3-team race, I think it's still a 4-team race, Jenna. I think even Washington's still alive. Washington damn near beat the Giants last week. Came down to it. Well, nobody's got more than 2 wins. None of these teams, Jenna, do I believe are going to go on a sustained winning streak here.
So that's what I was going to ask you before we move on. I want to ask you about Daniel Jones. I was going to say, after last night, does anyone suddenly feel, okay, now I feel more confident in the Eagles? And because of what Nick just said, because it was a little more of what the Giants gave away than what the Eagles did, maybe a little bit of both, I think we're in the exact same spot that we were before they even played the game. But let us talk about the other quarterback on the opposing team, Daniel Jones. We got a little Michael Vick experience here getting into that. Michael, we need your take on D. Jones' 80-yard run. Should have been an 88-yard touchdown run, if not for literally nothing, that tripped him up shy of the end zone. Please, my friend, break this one down for us.
Well, I just had a funny feeling that this was going to happen before it even happened, that Daniel Jones wasn't going to sustain in the open field. He got the defensive flow one way, and he had an open lane. It was the Michael Vick experience for about 8 seconds, and then it all of a sudden turned into the Daniel Jones experience. And you know what? I'm just glad that they finished the drive, so we don't have to talk about this all day today. Daniel Jones experience.
Yeah, we will.
Experience. It's brutal.
If they didn't score this would have been a terrible, terrible, terrible moment for him. It would have been so much worse. But look, Mike, I'm guessing that you've never done this before because you're a guy that actually experienced this over and over and over again. Always was in the open field. For me, I never was in the open field. That wasn't my game. There was an off season where I actually had to work on picking up my legs and actually running with great form because there was times where I was like, I'm running like a duck right now. And I will always get caught. So I spent the entire offseason trying to do this because I wasn't a fast guy like you and some of these other amazing athletes in the NFL.
Yeah. I was more faster in spurts and in bursts. I wasn't a long distance runner, so honestly, I